2019. If you have cell phones, please turn them off or silence them. Please join me in observing a moment of silence. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. You can call the roll, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Reed. Here. Brown. Lawler. Spicer.
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
And Mayor Atchison.
Here. Okay. First item is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, adjustments to the agenda? Okay.
This one. I'd like to table the rental certification update for a future date, possibly the next meeting.
Okay. All right. Any other additions, changes, or corrections? Okay. All those in favor of approving the agenda with the modification of tabling the item on update for rental certification, please say aye. 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 All those opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved as modified. Okay. First item is presentations and recognitions. We eliminated item A for this evening, so we'll go to the ARC update. Thank you for being with us tonight, Ms. DePries.
You're welcome. Getting it? So there's not a ton to update, but so I'm going to kind of combine this with an update and a little bit of background on ARC, which you've heard probably countless times, but the more you hear it, the better it sticks in. So the Albion Reinvestment Corporation, and I don't have a clicker, so Jill, will you click for me? Oh, nope, I do have a clicker.
I stole it.
Thank you. Just a reminder to everybody, it's a 501c3 public charity. It is specific to the downtown business district and the surrounding neighborhoods, and the mission is to alleviate conditions of deterioration. Listed on the screen are the 6 ARC projects that we're working on right now. So you've heard me talk about the Big Albion Plan, and ARC is part of the Big Albion Plan. These are 6 of those projects that are included within that plan. It consists of 16 buildings. If you want to count storefronts, it's 22 storefronts. And it'll be 45 plus apartments once we figure out how many apartments will go into 117 and 119. Those are the buildings that had been set aside for a theater project for Albion College. They have notified ARC that that project is not going to move forward in those properties. So we're adding that back into a full redevelopment with commercial and residential. Right now, you know, the dream, I think, is to do all these projects at once. But the one thing that's standing in our way is funding. So I wanted to kind of go through one of the projects, and it's the one at the very top, Superior Street Lofts, to kind of give you an idea of what I mean by funding and what's entailed in this. So Superior Street Lofts is a $2.5 million investment. That's the estimate we're working off right now based on the drawings that we have. It includes 12 apartments and then white space for the commercial, which is about 7,000 square feet. And that's combining 313 and 315. So the old Moose and the old Sanders building will be combined on the first floor for an anchor tenant. So as of now, we have all the drawings done, the renderings done. We have good cost estimates because of the quality of the drawings and renderings that we had. And then we've acquired 313 South Superior, so that we closed on that in May. So we're in process right now of 2 things. The biggest one is putting together that financial stack. But we're also working on a proactive approach to identify a national franchise hardware franchisee to partner with ARC to run a hardware store in that space. Over the last 2 years, we've worked with 3 different individuals that were interested for various lengths of times and for different reasons, though they've all fallen through. We know that a national hardware chain will be interested. It's finding someone that's willing to take on that mission and drive that process going forward at the local level. So when we talk about the financing, it's not all traditional financing. It's not all a bank. So for a $2.5 million project, we have to have about 20% equity in that. The owner has to have about 20% equity. Depending on the project and the ratios for the project, so the rents and stuff that come out with the, I'm sorry, I'm going all over tonight, that come up with the debt ratio and the return on the investment for the project. Some of it can be included in the building. So for this example, I think about $90,000 of it will be the cost of the building, or the money that's invested in the building will be the equity, and then we have to make up the rest of that $500. So cash needed into this deal for ARC is about $410,000. And these are estimates right now. We're still fine-tuning which programs will be involved. We believe this will qualify for a community revitalization program grant of about $1 million. That's based on 50% of the hard costs that are associated with this project. So you have to back out any of the soft costs or things that aren't eligible under that program. So we believe it should be right around $1 million. That leaves us about a $1.09 million gap or need for financing. Now, if you were hearing me say this to the MEDC, we'd word it completely different because you back into what your grant is going to be. But for simplicity's sake, I wanted to show you what really makes up this deal. So these programs are available to anyone that can put the project together. They're the only way we get these projects done. So it's not like ARC has to come up with $2.5 million to do this project, but they do have to come up with cash and then financing of about just over $1 million. That could change depending on, as the estimates come out, which programs might be more beneficial, but this is the structure that we're looking at right now. So again, out of these projects, the top one, the Superior Street Lofts, we're really working on that fundraising and looking for that commercial partner. So stay tuned. There should be a request for proposal issued in the next couple of weeks that requests a proactive approach to it, to come in and apply and compete for that space, and it'd be pretty much subsidized for a long period of time. The other ones are all in planning and fundraising. If the fundraising goes really great and we can get about $5 million raised in the next couple of months, then we'll slate all these probably at one time, and that would be the preferred route. But until we get the funding in place, we really can't, bring forward them for approvals. We can't come to the Planning Commission and ask for guidance on it, or bring it to council for guidance. This all takes steps, and there's still a lot of planning left to do. So I wanted to give you a background on that. The other things that ARC is working on is the programs that will be needed to make these all cash flow. You've heard me talk about the Targeted Redevelopment Area. It's a program through the Brownfield legislation. We are currently working on drafting those plans. There's 2 plans involved. There's an overarching Brownfield plan, and there's a work plan that talks about the capture of each parcel included in that plan. It's a new tool for the MEDC. They've done brownfields forever and a day, but this specific brownfield plan is new. So we know it's going to be a much longer process to work with MEDC to seek the approvals. They're going to be kind of writing the process as they go. So we know that that's going to take some time, and we've been putting a lot of resources and time to getting that developed. And then also working on the other funding programs. I think you've heard me talk about PACE in the past. That's a energy efficiency program. We've just recently vetted that. The board hasn't made a decision on whether they'll utilize it or not. But there's different programs out there that might come into need, depending again on those ratios. So if the program with the rents that we think we can get doesn't cash flow, we got to find other sources of revenue to support the project. So then we continue to work on the pro formas and the cost estimates. We've done cost estimates for ARC's project just for the Superior Street lofts. The other ones are in a holding pattern right now as we work through those numbers. Each time we go through a program or a project, we'll build on that, and it'll be easier to do the next cost estimating. A snapshot of the website. If you're not following us already, I hope you start. albionreinvest.org. There's a blog on there that talks about some of the things that ARC is working on, but it's also an opportunity to stay informed on the newest projects. And then the Facebook is also listed there. The contact page is just purely for you to understand who ARC is. Remember, there's 4 board members. That's Dr. Dobbins, Dr. Shaheen, Jeff Ott. Jeff Ott is a lawyer with Warner, Norcross, and Judd. And then Chef Mike McFarland from the Firekeepers. And then myself and Caroline Dobbins-Hurto. She's being donated by Castor Concepts, so all donations that come into ARC are 100% put into the projects. So it's just a recap. It's very high end. I wish I could give you the exact, this is the timing of when we're going to go forward with these projects. It all depends on when we can get the financing in place, and the financing is taking some time. Can I answer any questions?
I have one question. Has ARC looked at utilizing or exploring opportunity zone-based financing? That's about all I know about it. The name.
They're looking at setting up an opportunity zone fund. I don't know much about it. There's still a lot of questions out there in the market because the government hasn't fully built out that program. But I think that's my ray of hope right now, that they'll get funding through that, and we'll be able to see all these projects come within the next 3 years and be done.
Great.
There are time constraints with opportunity zone funds, so
Right.
Once it's funded, you're on the clock. There's no putting it aside.
Councilmember Williamson.
With the pro formas for your projects, how long until each project actually has a return on the investment?
It depends on each one. And we're still working on the Superior Street lofts. It could be 7, 10 years. It depends on which programs you use. We're trying to keep, there's a certain rate of return that we have to get for MEDC to participate.
Okay.
And I believe that's around like 7 or 8%.
Okay.
And then there's debt ratios that the banks will require. So it's playing with all those numbers and keeping rents within what we think the market can withhold and subsidizing the commercial space. So it's probably going to take a little longer than, if this project was in downtown Detroit and we
Right.
saw those
Oh, right.
market rates coming up.
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. Amy, I may have missed it, but did you say or mention what the next art project would be?
We're working on the Superior Street lofts, which is 313 and 315.
Where exactly is that?
The corner of Erie and South Superior, the big red building,
That used to be Sanders?
Sanders.
Okay,
Mhm.
so those are gonna be lofts.
There's going to be 12 apartments, 1 and 2 bedrooms, loft
Okay.
type apartments, and then that Anchor hardware store. The hope is what that would be on the commercial floor.
Okay, my second question is, with Albion being designated as a rising tide community, does that benefit ARC in its efforts to?
No, there isn't really a funding source with Rising Tide. Rising Tide gives us technical assistance, but if there's these types of projects, the technical assistance is really there. Where Rising Tide, in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, is really beneficial is, we're not getting interest in housing right now, so that might be a good time to bring the Mishta and others to the table. Rising Tide helps them come to the table. It encourages them to participate and use the programs that they have to open up to Albion. Doesn't mean there's any funds involved. Typically not.
Councilmember Clark.
So it's my understanding that for people that are already in business downtown, does some of them own the buildings that they're in, only downstairs and not the upstairs?
It's a collection. Some of them own from sidewalk to the roof, some of them don't. They've been condoed up over the years. John can tell you all the addresses, I'm sure. One example is around Dickerson Music. Calhoun County Land Bank actually owns the 2 storefronts in the upstairs. Dickerson owns Dickerson's. So, you know, you might not own the roof just because you're in that building.
Okay.
So that's not unheard of. You see that in downtowns. It's not a good practice.
But in Arch's case, they own the buildings.
Arc's
Ground to
case,
floor.
they own the buildings.
So if they need, if they own the buildings and they need to be remodeled, is that a zoning area for us? What do you think? I'm saying as far as what the appearance is from the outside, what you look at.
I'm not sure I understood it, so I might be answering the wrong question, but the outside, the facade is included in the project. So it's included in that percentage of hard cost that you can get money towards.
Right, that's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
So if I own if I own one of those buildings downstairs and I had a business downstairs and I was doing nothing with the upstairs and it was a sore eyesore at this point, that's what I was asking.
There's lots of different programs that are available. One's a facade grant through CDBG. There's a requirement that we have to have at least 5 storefronts go through at the same time. There's different ways. If it's just the apartments that need help, but the outside looks good and you already got a commercial tenant, there's a rental rehab that works great for that. So there's different programs for each individual options. You know, it's just understanding what's the best. You know, what are you going to do? Where's your money flow coming? They want to be holistic when they look at it, so they don't want to do just the rental rehab and then, oh, by the way, next year I'm going to come for the facade. You know, they want to put it all together and make sure it's sustainable.
Okay.
And MEDC is who they would contact to get that information, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to help with that. That's what my job really is. But we would bring in an MEDC. So Michelle Audette Bauman, I think you've all met her. I'm pretty sure you have. She's a great girl. She knows a lot about that stuff, and she's very creative. So we're very lucky to have her. But that's really their programs. With those programs, though, there is local support required. So typically, it's tax increment financing, brownfield work plans. Wow.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next item is recognition of Homestead Bank's 130th anniversary. If I could get Mr. Evans to join me at the podium. Proclamation recognizing Friday, June 21st as Homestead Savings Bank Day in Albion, Michigan. Whereas Homestead Savings Bank was formed in 1889 and opened its doors in Albion on June 21st, 1889. And whereas this bank has been able to keep the same name and serve the Albion community for 130 years. And whereas Homestead Savings Bank is now the 14th oldest bank in the state of Michigan. And whereas community banks have specialized knowledge of their local communities and customers and base credit decisions on local knowledge obtained through long-term relationships. And whereas community banks obtain most of their deposits locally and make many, if not the majority, of their loans to local businesses. And whereas community banks serve rural, small town, and suburban customers and markets that are not comprehensively served by large banks. And whereas Homestead Savings Bank has a critical role in keeping our local economy vibrant and growing by lending to creditworthy borrowers in the greater Albion region. And whereas Homestead staff actively support the Albion community by leading a variety of civic projects which help foster community spirit and enhances the quality of life for residents and visitors. And whereas Homestead Savings Bank will be celebrating their 130th year in our community on Friday, the 21st of June, 2019, with with an open house event from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. with refreshments and drawings to any gift cards from local business. Now therefore, I, Dave Atchison, Mayor of Albion, do hereby proclaim June 21st, 2019 as Homestead Savings Bank Day in Albion, Michigan. In witness whereof I am hereunto set my hand and cause to be affixed the official seal of Albion, Michigan on this 7th day of June, 2019.
I would just like to thank all of the city council and Mayor Atchison for this. Also want to thank the Albion community for supporting us 130 years. It's very unusual that a bank keeps the same name, same location like that for a small community bank. I also want to thank our staff because they are involved in the community and they do an absolutely fabulous job serving their customers. And I would like to invite all of you and all of the community to join us on Friday for that open house, and we'll celebrate together. So thank you very much.
I want to thank you and your staff, as you mentioned, they're so active in the community. I think it was this past week you were out putting mulch on all of the trees on Superior Street. And I know Ms. Elise Killer is one of your valued staff members, and we see her out and about all over the city beautifying it. But you have staff that are involved in so many different aspects of this community, and we really appreciate it and value.
Well, thank you for that. We enjoyed doing that, and I say that with the mulch project. That was in conjunction with the Downtown Development Authority, the DDA, that paid for the mulch, and we placed the mulch. So it was a good collaboration to see that group active as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, public comments. Persons addressing the city council shall limit their comments to agenda items only and no more than 3 minutes, please. Proper decorum is required. Please step forward if you wish to make a public comment and state your name and address.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Al Smith, 1209 Adams Street. I want to do something that a lot of people don't do. I want to advocate for the spending of money. The agenda items I'd like to address are items for individual discussion. Item B, request approval settlement agreement with Wells Equipment, which is a settlement on a truck that they are holding that pretty much belongs to us. And item H, request approval for purchase of DPW equipment. The reason both of these do need to be approved is we have heard for the past, I won't just say months, years, everyone comes up here and complains about the roads are bad. We need to get grass cut. We need to do that. We need, all this done within the city. But then we all know that the city does not have the manpower, but we also know the city does not have the equipment to do these projects that we're requesting be done meeting after meeting after meeting. Tonight we have an opportunity. Yes, it's going to cost a bundle, but if we have to spend it, let's do it. Let's get the equipment in here so that they can actually get out and patch the roads the way we would like them to. It may not be as quick as we like, but it can happen if they've got the equipment. So that's my advocation this evening. Please pass the funding for those two items. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there other public comments on agenda items this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to the next part, which is the consent calendar. And we have 3 items, which is approval of study session minutes from the 29th of May, study session minutes from the 3rd of June, and regular session minutes from the 3rd of June. Are there any changes, corrections, or additions to the minutes the council members wish to make? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor of approving the study session minutes for the 29th of May, the 3rd of June, and regular session meetings for the 3rd of June, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The minutes are approved. Agendas. Okay. Next item. Request approval to place delinquent water bills and abatements on tax bills. Mr. Mead.
Good evening, Finance Director Tom Mead. This is the annual process or procedure we go through each year for collecting the delinquent abatements that the city has incurred, the costs that the city's incurred on abatements, and also delinquent water bills from properties around the city. And the way the ordinance reads is if it's a little strangely worded, but if as of April 1st in any given year, the items that were delinquent 6 months prior to that, so going back to September 30th from the previous year, anything delinquent as of that point in time is eligible to be rolled to the property tax bills. It'll just get added to the bill. I'm sure you've all seen it in the past. And then when the bills are mailed out, those delinquent items are included on the tax bill. And that is the city's primary way of collecting those delinquencies. And the question comes up a lot, like on water bills in particular. Again, the way our ordinance is, the debt, the delinquent debt stays or remains with the parcel. That's why it's going to the property tax, as opposed to like consumers or something where their delinquency follows the customer. But in the cities, and this is a normal practice around the state, the debt stays with the property, and that's why we collect it through the property tax system. So, any questions?
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. Just, yes, Director Reed. So this obviously are water bills that the water is shut off in their homes, because don't we shut the water off? So are these bills all where homes have no water running, or?
Not necessarily. These particular accounts, yes, most of them are shut off, but the way the system works is let's take a particular parcel, for example. If you've noticed your water bills, they'll end with an 01 or 02 or 03, whatever. When the first person that moves in there, they'll get a billing number that'll end with, say, 01. That's the first person. If that person moves out and a new person moves in, they will get a new number for that parcel, but it'll end in 02. And we'll still try to collect from the previous owner, but a lot of times they've left, if they've moved, or what happens a lot of times is we always ask title companies and, people that are, when they're transferring property, they're supposed to contact the city and tell us what day that closing is going to take place, because then we will go out and do a final read on that day. But a lot of times they don't. A lot of times they just look at the most recent bill that they've received. Well, as you're aware, we bill quarterly, so you could have 2.5 months of usage from when that last bill was mailed out before the people leave. So then they close on the house and leave, and they never contact us to see what that balance is. Or it could just be tenants that, move through the house. So there could be water at these parcels, but in a different name or a different account number. So the account number that is on, or where the water is on, is current. These are all accounts that have been inactive, so to speak. So there's no longer usage on these accounts, but we're just trying to collect them now, if that makes sense.
It does, but I guess for me, I'm wondering, why would we keep water on? Even if a new tenant came in, the bill was that, if it's a rental, then I guess I'm thinking, why wouldn't we turn the water off? And if the landlord would be responsible if the tenant moved without paying it, I guess. So it's
Right.
ultimately gonna end up on the landlord's bill if it's a rental, because we're putting it on the taxes.
Correct.
But for a home, when someone moved.
Correct, and we try to do that. We try
and it's
to
a loss.
stay pretty firm in saying, hey, there's old balances out there, the landlord's got to pay these before new. But again, a lot of times this is a situation where maybe if it's a property sale, the owner it's a different owner, so, and they're trying to get the water on, so they just didn't get caught when, I don't know, it's some odd scenarios that will come up.
Some of
that,
these we're just not gonna get money from.
right,
Okay.
well, that's the other issue
Okay.
too, yes, that's the other issue too. A lot of these will end up, even the taxes themselves, even though we go through this process, the property taxes are gonna go to the county as well, because they're just, yep.
Are there other questions by council? Councilmember Clark.
So I know right now we don't use, any kind of direct deposit or anything like that. Is that something we're gonna look at or anticipating moving into in the future?
We've talked about a few different things,
Or
and
direct
you're,
withdrawal, I meant.
you're right, we probably need to look at getting up to speed in the 21st century here on our water bills, but it's a little difficult partly because we bill quarterly, and that causes such a fluctuation sometimes in the usage, because if there's a leak, they can really spike, and you don't have that consistency and stuff, and we've talked a lot about trying to switch over to a monthly billing and try to get it, and then you could go to something more like what Consumers does, where people could do you could say an estimate, what, to try to keep it the same every month and then settle up at the end of the year so they know exactly what it's gonna be. I mean, there's a lot of different things we could try, and we've talked about them, we just haven't got to that point yet, but, a direct deposit isn't out of the question. It's a good idea, it's something else for us to look at.
And part of that is just the manpower it takes to go from house to house, checking those
Yeah,
meters.
exactly.
I'm sure in the future, we'll have, like Consumers does, where it will send us that information and we won't have to worry about going door to door. And we can probably do it more of a live basis and bill monthly.
Or guesstimate,
Right.
because a lot of them do estimate
Right.
readings right now.
And the problem with the estimate though too is it doesn't
It's
catch if
the
there's
overusage.
if there's a leak or something, you don't catch it, then people get mad because, well, how come we didn't let us know that it was real high? And, so.
Councilmember Williamson.
I think I missed something in the translation at the beginning. So the customer who paid for who didn't pay for the water. Okay. And then you also have the property owner now. The tax bill that it's going to end up on is the current property owner or
Correct.
the person who
Well,
didn't pay the bill?
the current property owner, yes, because the delinquent water stays with the property. So
Okay,
whoever's
so there will
gonna,
be, so there will be a few people in here who are gonna get their bill and be quite surprised.
I don't know if they'll be surprised. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time, so I think people kind of understand how it works, and I think they do get all the normal notices, that are sent out. But it's possible, yes, we do get a few, like if it's a new purchase, and the title company, for example, didn't contact us to find out what it was.
And we don't
Sometimes
work
that
with a
occurs.
collections agency, do we not work with a collections?
We have
agency
not, no,
For the people who actually did not pay?
we have not to this point. For the most part, we've had pretty good success with this if the people are paying the taxes, but again, not all.
This should not come as any surprise, because these are
Oh, yeah, no.
delinquent bills.
Yes.
City Attorney.
The one thing I would offer, the council is, as it relates to the rentals, I mean, we do have an ordinance in town that basically allows landlords to follow procedures such that the water bills wouldn't come back on the property. Currently, none of the landlords in town use that process.
Okay.
So, but that is available, at least for the rentals.
You said there's an ordinance that covers that? At your convenience, would you send me what the ordinance number is?
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions by council? Thank you, Mr. Mead, appreciate it. Okay. So, we have a motion to place delinquent water bills and abatements on tax bills.
So moved.
There's- Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's approved. Okay, request approval of the settlement agreement with Wells Equipment. Did you want to, would you please give us a summary? Thank you.
So, what you have in front of you is a settlement and release of all claims for the truck that was purchased from Wells Equipment Sales back in 2011. A lot of this was discussed in closed session, so other than what you have in front of you, I won't go into detail beyond that, but it's a complete release of liability by Wells in favor of the city in exchange for the payment of $99,377.78, which is a 10% reduction from the original purchase price and includes the recently made repairs. What you have in your packet is was the draft agreement. Since I actually got today, this afternoon, Wells has signed the agreement, so they've executed it. So now it's just here for your signature
Okay.
or approval.
Okay. May I have a motion for approval of the settlement agreement with Wells Equipment?
So moved.
Okay.
Support.
Okay. Are there any further questions or discussion? All right, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Reed, Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Next item, discussion changes to single hauler contract with Granger Container Service, my apologies. So discussion of changes to the single hauler contract with Granger Container Services. So I don't recall which, I think actually it was Councilmember Waller, so is there any other council member that would like to begin with the discussion?
Well, I know we need to look into either continuing this contract or doing a new RFP for next year. And there's been a lot of concerns that have been brought up by the public. In particular, people who travel for the winter and having to pay the contract for the entire year. Maybe some type of large item pickup on a biannual or quarterly basis. The leaf pickup and how that is set up currently. We have issues of seniors who use a lot less garbage than the one big container, whether or not we could go with a smaller container for them, and also the ease of access, whether or not in some situations where they have service where they could have the hauler will come up and bring it out to the road for them. And so I think we need to look into these things and what other communities have done. I remember at the time we did this, Chelsea's contract came up, their RFP that they did, and maybe that's something that we need to look into is what the city of Chelsea has done. But those are kind of the things that I recall from what the discussions have been.
City Attorney.
So I kind of mentioned this when this came up last time, but I think there's two ways you need to look at this. So either one, you do an RFP, and in the RFP, you address all the things that the interior manager just laid out for you. Like these are the things that we must have or would like to have or whatever. Or you approach Granger and say, we want to continue the contract, but we need these things. But you don't want to do the latter before the former because it'll impact your closed bidding process. So I think you need to decide whether you want to continue with Granger for, say, another 3-year cycle and try to negotiate those things into a future contract, or you decide we're just going to flat out do an RFP and hope that they're the successful bidder and integrate in those additional services, or maybe another service comes in and integrates those services, but do one or the other. But I wouldn't approach Granger, try to negotiate, and if it falls apart, then do an RFP, because then basically Granger is at a disadvantage in the bidding process.
Right. And the third option is just say, we're not going to do this anymore. Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. I think I know it's a discussion tonight, but I think I'd like us to possibly do a study session on this, because I think someone mentioned snowbirds, and maybe that's another council member may have differing opinions, and I think and then I've been approached with some people when I had the precinct 5 meeting. Some suggestions were that we give an opt-out option or clause and credit for some people who don't have as much trash as others. So I think there's some issues that we probably need to talk about, because she may have something to say about the opt-out clause that which I think is good, and it may not be. So I think we need to, as a council meet and discuss basically what we feel should be included before we approach Granger or do an RFP.
And Councilmember Williamson?
Okay, so I wanted some clarification from the attorney. So what you're saying is that we cannot meet with Granger or have Granger do any sort of renegotiation of the next contract?
No, I think
No.
you can, but my point is this, I think you need to decide whether you wanna try to negotiate, like, continue with Granger and try to negotiate with them, or you do an RFP, because if you negotiate with them and you're not successful, and then decide to do an RFP, you kind of, you put them at a disadvantage, because, you know, they've already publicly tipped their hand at what they're willing to do and not do, and then in a closed bidding process, they're already at a disadvantage. So my point is, you make that decision, we're either gonna go with them and try to negotiate the best deal we can, or do an RFP.
But if we go with them and try to negotiate and fail, we're still stuck with them for 3 years.
No. You can, if you go to negotiate with them and you fail, you can go do an RFP, but I think they're at a disadvantage.
So,
And I don't think it's fair to them. So I think you either, you tell them, hey, here's what we need, or would like to
And
have,
what it's gonna cost us.
you know? But, I mean,
Let me ask, did that answer your question? Because it certainly didn't answer it to me.
So it
I'm
sounds,
trying to figure out who benefits, well, sorry, okay, so I'm thinking that this is like the normal part of like having a service is after you've had it for a certain amount of time, you talk about what you didn't like, what you did like, what could have been changed, what couldn't change. So I understand what you're saying, that they publicly tip their hand and they're at a disadvantage. Could someone explain to me why that's a bad thing? It sounds like it's a bad thing for them.
So they're gonna tell you how much they can do it for, which will be done publicly.
right.
And then you're gonna put it out to bid, so everybody bidding against them knows what they
Bid
told
under.
you, which is not fair, and they could be underbid.
Except I would change one word in that, interim city manager. They will tell you what they will do it for, which is not necessarily what they could do it for. Okay,
well,
so,
I mean, and what the some of you weren't on council at the time, but I mean, I can tell you from my memory, Granger basically cut every other entity's throat when it came to bidding. I mean, massively underbid everybody. So I would be shocked if that was.
So my point is, I'm actually very, like, as a citizen, as a council member, very happy with Granger's services. However, if we were just to not, like, renegotiate this and get them to fix some of these problems that many in the community are having, then we would need to go with someone else.
Well, but you take the chance at that point of considerably going higher for your
Right.
costs, you know, and so that's what you have to consider. Do we like what we have, and are they willing to stay at it? And can we make a few adjustments to that at a low rate, or take the chance of going out for a holding bid and having a lot higher prices?
So.
Councilmember Clark.
So it sounds like basically the only thing that we're really asking for is some senior citizen benefits.
No, I think actually, I believe there's quite a few things, and I think there's a lot of merit in the recommendation that Councilmember Spicer said, so we can sit and discuss and bring out all of these things, and then we can have a discussion and decide what are the things that we really feel compelled need to be changed.
And I think it's important for council members to talk to some constituents to get their ideas, because they totally said some things that I certainly was unaware of. They had mentioned something about having Granger the last 4 weeks of November, if they could somehow, because of the sewers, they could somehow they have a scraper, I don't know, come around and scrape the gutters, because they get clogged with leaves from people who don't get their leaves. So, I mean, we need to discuss this, because there's some things I never thought about and entertained that we need to discuss, decide if this is what we want to approach Granger with.
City Attorney.
So,
That's not,
the one good thing in all this is that the current contract doesn't expire for, I think, almost 9 months.
Okay.
so ahead, Tim.
And so you've got, I wanna say it's March 31st of 2020,
Okay.
so you've got plenty of time, and, I mean, you could certainly schedule a study session sometime, I would say do it sometime, maybe later this summer or whatever, where you still get time to decide what direction you wanna go. I mean, there's two things to keep in mind that that Councilwoman Spicer brought up as things to consider, you have a completely separate ordinance on the books right now that basically mandates whether you guys do a single hauler, whether you do multiple haulers or whatever, everybody's supposed to have trash service in the city. That's a totally separate ordinance. And the other thing to keep in mind is the way that, at least the way that the administration came up with identifying who needed to have trash service was by who had water service, basically saying, okay, this is how we know that the home is occupied. So basically, everybody that's got water service is identified as needing to have trash service. And that's how we did that. And I think, and I defer to John on this, I think we were fairly successful. And there were a minimum of people that weren't complying anymore after we
There's only about a half a dozen that we did last time.
Yeah, about half a dozen out of, I don't know how many residences we have in the city, but that's not bad.
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. Question for the city manager. Do you know what the cost is for the recycling center that we currently have? Because I know I've had couple of constituents who would like recycling to be a part of, included in the Ranger trash service. And for me, I used to recycle when I could go there every day, anytime, but now that they have these limited hours, I don't recycle as much as I used to. So, I mean, that's something we need to discuss. But do you know how much?
Do you know what we're paying for that?
I think it's 7,000 a year, that's all right. I think the city pays the county 7,000 a year for
For the recycling center down there?
Yep.
Okay.
and then they staff it.
And then they staff it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And I know there was recycling included in the RFPs last time, and we went without it, but there's probably those bids are there to give an idea what that cost was.
And we went without it probably because it was the cost they made.
Yeah. Well, and we already had the recycling center here. I don't think the hours have quite changed as they have now, so.
Okay. Okay, any other comments? If not, we'll move on to the next one, but we'll come up with some dates for a study session. I think that's a very good idea. Last question I would have is whether we should get representatives from the community to get together with a council member and provide input.
I think anybody with concern should contact their council member so that we can get that information and know what we need to address.
Okay.
Additionally, I'll work on trying to find out what some other communities have with contracts as well. Maybe some ideas in there.
Okay. Maybe check with, we might be able to get a survey sent out. I think the AmeriCorps Vista folks are pretty handy with putting that together. We discuss with them. Okay. Next item, request approval of Resolution 2019-23, a resolution to approve the M199 road diet. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Approve, or support? Okay, discussion.
So MDOT will be redoing Austin Avenue. I believe they're going from Superior Street now all the way out to the city. Well, they're actually going out to 25.5-mile road to resurface that entire section. And so part of this, they've asked to reduce it down from 4 lanes to 3 lanes the entire way. So it'll be just like it was, we did Superior Street downtown. There'll be 2 lanes for travel and a center turn lane.
Questions by council? Could you highlight the benefits and why they want to do that?
Mostly it's for traffic safety. When you have the 4 lanes, cars making left turns and so forth might not see that car coming in the outside lane. Same with people crossing the road. It really helps with pedestrian traffic. And so that's the main reason behind it. With the car counts that we're having out there, the need for 4 lanes isn't really there anymore. And so they're looking to move all of those for safety purposes down to 3 lanes. The turn lane allows traffic to stay out of the way for people making left turns and allows flow of traffic, but it doesn't have cars passing each other trying to get up in front of somebody before it goes back to 2 lanes.
So will they have to do anything with the lights? The traffic lights, will they have to change those at all?
So the traffic light at Albion and Austin belongs to the city, and that's our responsibility to take care of. And then the traffic light at Eaton and Austin belongs to MDOT, and that's theirs to take care of. I think that's a newer traffic light that they put in, but I don't know if that's part of this project to change that in any way, shape, or form. Mainly, this will just involve the restriping of the road once it's resurfaced, so that you'll only see 3 lanes instead of 4.
Councilmember Reed.
Remember when they had the meeting over there, did they say that out by where the trucks come in to go to the feed plant? Is that going to be made wider there?
You know, I don't know if it was or not. I know it's set up for 3 lanes right there, and I imagine they might probably do a little more to that if they can. And that might include a right turn lane coming from the west, possibly.
Yeah, 'cause that
But,
gets kind of.
yeah, it gets really congested at times out there.
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. I just want to say that I certainly have no problem with the reduction of the lanes from 4 to 3, but you said that it was for safety measures and pedestrians, so then were pedestrians and were they in harm's way with the 4 lanes? Basically what I'm saying. So,
It does make it more dangerous to cross the road, because you may not see a secondary car coming from behind another car. That's probably more of a hazard for people making turns. You see a vehicle coming, making a left turn, so you don't think anybody's gonna come, you pull out in front of it, and there's a car coming behind it. It is safer because there's only 3 lanes of travel, so.
and is that a state road as well?
Yes, that's why it's an
So
MDOT.
you really don't have any say?
Well, we do, they want our permission to do that. If we really think it should be a 4-lane road, we can push that, and they would probably keep it a 4-lane road for us. But they'd prefer to go to the 3 lanes on their behalf, so.
Any other comments or questions by council? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2019-23, a resolution to approve the M199 road diet. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is approved. I'm sorry?
No,
You said no?
I said no.
Okay. All right, so, yeah, 1, 2, 3. All right. The ayes have it.
No, actually,
Gotta take a vote.
four affirmative vote.
We do have 4.
You haven't voted.
Yeah, I voted. I said aye.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. So,
It's a motion.
would you please call a roll for this? We're going to vote. If you vote aye, you're voting to approve this. If you vote no, it's against it. So please call the roll.
Councilmember Spicer,
No.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Next item, request approval of Michigan Economic Development Corporation, I think it's supposed to say agreement with the City of Albion to provide funding to replace aging utilities and infrastructure of the Albion wastewater treatment plant. May I have a motion to approve?
Support.
Okay, discussion. If we could have, I guess, Mr. Meader, if you want
Well,
to.
I can try, I might need a little help from Tom, but, so, we had overages in the cost of redoing the wastewater treatment plant. And as a result of that, we requested additional funding to help cover that cost. In the process of doing that, Senator Knopf was able to get us an extra $500,000, which was given to us last summer. This is kind of approving the spending of that money on basis on what it was for. I believe there was about $276,000 roughly overages that we had. And so that automatically goes to the overages at the plant to cover those costs, and so we don't have to cover those costs anymore. And then the remainder of that $500,000 was set aside to extend the water main to the equestrian center and also sewer to the equestrian center. Basically, it said whatever money's left over needs to go to that in particular. We've had conversations with Mickey Bittner, our engineer. I believe we're looking at extending the water main down 29-mile road to the entrance of the equestrian center. And then there was a sewer project involved in that, but I don't know which part that was.
The sewer project was basically to go across Haven Road before we redo it. So we would stub from, Huron, that tees there, stub that over so that when we do redo Haven, we won't have to tear Haven up. So we won't be doing a lot of sewer work with this project. The ultimate goal is to do this in phases. This is just basically phase 1 that we had the funding for. which was to extend the water main. We aren't necessarily extending it to the equestrian center per se. We're extending it out that way so that when we find future funding and go to phase 2 or even phase 3 of this project, we'll come across the backside of the cemetery and connect or bring it to the cemetery, the water main and sewer to the cemetery, and then bring that back down so that we have a full loop around that area of town. Because of the funding, we can only do just a small portion of it. So that's where we're at with it right now, and we're looking at phasing it in. Okay?
Councilmember Williamson.
So is it getting extended to the equestrian center?
It will, that is part of the first phase, yes.
So is Albion College going to be on that?
Well, that'll be up to them to run, I mean, it's a long ways back there, I don't know what their plan is for running the water right now, but all the houses on 29 Mile Road would have the option of hooking to city water at that point as well.
Okay.
And so, the further we extend it out, additionally, what it's gonna provide us is with a fire hydrant at the entrance to the equestrian center, which will help tremendously should they have a fire back there and getting water where we need to get to water.
And most of the houses along 29 Mile Road as well.
Yeah.
For fire coverage.
Now, if the college were to decide if they do want to look into that, who would be paying for that?
That would be private properties that are responsible.
Right.
Okay.
Now, as far as any main that would end up in a phase 2 or whatever, however we do that, to make that loop, there would have to be easements and agreements and everything else created to make that type of thing happen. And then they would tap off of us from there. There's also the county campground. I'm not sure, that is another portion of this whole project. That's, the county has purchased the land on the south side of the cemetery for a trailhead campground as well. So this would all connect into all of that.
What we're discussing and ultimately will vote on this evening is not incurring additional debt, not spending a penny of public funds on the college or private property.
That is
This is funding we already have secured, and this is the authorization to spend it as it was provided to us.
And I can speak a little bit to that. The MEDC grant was for overages that we incurred at the wastewater treatment plant and also for trailhead infrastructure. Since that campground will become part of the trailhead, we felt it was better, we need to make a loop with the water and the sewer. We felt that it was better spent money to make that loop going down 29 Mile Road, since we already had water to the corner of 29 and Haven. We felt that that was a better use of our money, and look at coming back around the opposite way to make that loop. It just made more sense. Going under the bridge and putting in a 6-inch main, going out to absolutely nothing, made no sense to us. So it was just a better spending of the money. The grant, the original grant of $500,000 did include that trailhead language, so it had to be spent in that way as well. But there is, other than that, there are no funds from the city of Albion.
Okay. Any other comments or questions by council? Okay.
If I could just add real quick, this will work out very well for the sewer department, because the original overage was about $295,000 when the initial grant called for a match of 85. So we were 210,000 over what we were supposed to pay. Then, because of the way this grant was offered, this money was offered, they are willing to not only reimburse us the 210, but the 85 that we were originally supposed to match. However, there were a few purchases made in a prior grant period that occurred before this was awarded or offered. So we're gonna miss out on about 20,000 and only get 275 instead of the full 295. But that's much better than the 85 that we were originally supposed to spend. And the other thing I just wanted to point out, we did make it very clear to MEDC that we do not have money available right now or budgeted to do this full project. So we want to make it clear to them that is there any repercussions if we can only spend what's left over? And they said, no, we will set it up. They worded it so that they call this a phase one, so we can go as far as we can go with the money that's available and stop wherever that may be and wait for future funding, hopefully, to continue on. So you're exactly right. There will be no new money, no out-of-pocket money for the city for this, for us to receive this $500,000.
Okay. All right. If there's no further comments or questions, would you please read the roll?
Councilmember Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Aye, yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Mead, appreciate it. Okay. Next item, request approval of consumers' energy change and standard lighting contracts. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, discussion.
Ken, do you know this one, or Tom? Did you, the lighting contract, were you? Was it?
Trying to catch up here. I'm not real up to speed on the recent agreement that they're asking us for. However, what I do know is when we came to you, gosh, I can't remember. It seems like it was around the end of the year. Consumers, we received money, some funding to replace a lot of the street lights in the city. And we got your blessing to move forward on that. So Consumers has completed that process. They've replaced a number of the lights. And what they did is they focused on the light, these are street lights we're talking. They focused on the lights that draw the highest wattage and some of the older style fixtures and replaced them and updated them with the newer, more efficient LEDs. And all they're doing now is asking us for a agreement moving forward, because all the street lights, they're not like your house or something that has a meter. They don't know exactly, what is being used each billing period. What they can determine or get a pretty close calculation of, though, they know the light, the style of light, and they know what the wattage is, and based on that and from their, their database of knowledge of all the lights they have around the state, they can come up with a pretty good estimate of what the usage is for the street light throughout, or for each billing period. So they're just asking us to agree that under the new lighting, I'm sure there'll be a reduced rate, reduced wattage, what will be billed for each month. And if you recall, our streetlights are far and large our largest electricity costs. They run about $12,000 a month, roughly, or $140,000 to $150,000 a year. We're hoping to see about a 25 to 30% drop just from all these replaced bulbs. So, and that comes right out of general fund. So that certainly will help the general fund substantially. So.
But the contract would change so that, as it is now, I guess, they actually measure the amount of electricity that the city uses?
No, they do a calculation or an estimate based on what style light was at that pole. But again, the contract we had is based on all the old style.
Okay.
So this is just updating the contract to all the new style lights.
All right, so essentially, the methodology of calculating and saying, City of Albion, here's what you owe us,
Yep.
that's not changing.
Correct.
It's just they need to update the parameters because the lighting, they've spent $100,000, or we spent $100,000 to upgrade lighting, and we're gonna save electricity, so they need to update their calculations.
Correct. All these poles that got updated will have a newer style fixture and bulb, and therefore use less wattage. So.
Councilmember Williams, any questions by council? Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. So it will be your voice kind of trailed off as you said, something about it'll help the general fund. So is that it will not be no additional cost for us? Did I hear you correctly?
Correct, and the reason I pointed that out is because the street lighting is paid for out of general fund. That's a direct expense to the general fund. And by these new using the new, more efficient LED lights, they project, the consumers is projecting about a 25 to 30% savings or reduction in our costs. And
Will we see that right away within a year, or?
we should see it as soon as they get the new contract and start, do the computation for the new bills. So we should start seeing it right away.
In the last month, they replaced the lights on Michigan Avenue, Superior Street, that aren't the city lights downtown. Austin Avenue, Eaton Street. I think if you go out at night, you can really notice the difference of the LED lights over the old yellowish colored lights because they're brighter white. Additionally, I found that as public safety reports out street lights out, and as we've been doing that, they've actually been replacing those side streets with LED lights as well. So as lights are breaking and going out, they're actually replacing them with LEDs also.
Thank you.
Seeing no further comments, please read the roll.
Councilmember Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Next item is approval, confirmation of initial appointments to the Housing Ad Hoc Committee. And the initial appointments include those individuals that are listed below. And I appreciate Mr. Worley, the President of the Chamber of Commerce Visitor Centers, being with us. So may I have a motion to approve this list of initial appointments?
So moved.
Support. Okay. Discussion, questions? I'll make one comment. The reason I'm doing it this way is I have had conversations with our city attorney as far as appointing ad hoc committees, and it falls under the same process and same provisions as other committees. If I get this wrong, Colin, please correct me. And so just to keep everything above board and make sure we're doing things correctly and transparent, every time we're going to appoint a committee, we'll follow that same process, and I'll put forward who I want to appoint, and then council, we can either vote to confirm or not. So, and I did have a discussion, brief conversation with Councilmember Lawler, and she's excited and pleased to head that up, and I let her know who those initial appointments would be, and she's happy with that, and basically summed it up with she can work with anybody and everybody. So, are there any other questions or comments by council? Okay. All those in favor of approving the initial appointments, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, they are approved. Okay, next item, request approval for purchase of Department of Public Works equipment. There is, I think we probably each person received via email some updated information. There's one at our in front of us here. May I have a motion to approve the purchase of Department of Public Works equipment? Support?
Support.
Okay. Discussion.
Just to start out, I provided everybody tonight a copy of page 9 and 10 of the capital improvement plan from 2017. You'll see in 2017, the last item listed there was a hot patcher for $80,000. The other equipment listed in 2018, the Vector truck purchase is there, which we've already purchased. There's a front-end loader, which we were able to get through the military. Street sweeper, which we're still working on. And purchase asphalt repair truck and Durapatcher for $147,000. And then I also gave you a list of the cost of purchases with a couple things changed, and I'll explain that in a second. Additionally, for 2019, on the capital improvements plan, there was a backhoe replacement listed as well. We were also able to get a backhoe through the military to assist in those costs as well, so those costs aren't there anymore either. As we go through, we have several items: the wide area mower, Durapatcher, a planer, and then 2 hot patchers. The 2 hot patcher prices changed because we had a misunderstanding kind of in the quote that we received from the state. Additionally, the dump box was not included on either one of them, and only one of them was included as a recycler. After I spoke with Ken about that, I thought it made more sense for the cost to actually get the dump box and the recycler on both of them, so they both could provide those services. And so we have a quick PowerPoint, I should say quick, there's a PowerPoint to go through that'll explain each of the items that we're looking at. So. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay, thank you. Oh, thank you, Scott, really, that helps. So the wide area mower basically is an 11-foot wide mower. We have a lot of large areas to mow here within the city. Currently, we have 3 72-inch mowers, so we have 3 men working to basically mow what this mower can do for us. We would still have one mower go around, cut in trees, around trees and in close to things, but we could really knock out a lot of lawn and have 2 additional people then hot patching and working on other projects while this is really doing the work of 3 mowers. The MSRP for this mower is $72,000. Through the My Bid, we're able to purchase it for $55,773. So that is basically what we're looking for wide area mowing.
Jerry, on hit plan.
Huh? Where's it? Oh, sorry,
I switched. Okay.
it wasn't on there. It was
What did you say the width was on this one?
11 foot, 11 feet.
Inches.
Okay, that would be 2 times 72, not 3.
2, but you're able to move a whole lot faster and do a lot more with the power that it has. Any questions on the mower?
What's the life expectancy on it? Service life?
I don't have that right now. I can get that.
Any other questions, council? Any other comments from the city manager? Okay.
Yeah, there is a warranty involved with that, and I believe it's 3 or 5 years for this one. And this is out of Performance in Jackson where we'd be ordering it, so they're very close to us as well. Okay. Next, we're talking about a Durapatcher, or no, I guess we're going to the hot.
Sorry, guys.
What's that? Hot patch.
It's not in order, sorry.
On the hot patchers, basically, as you know, we have one hot patcher that's a 2-ton single axle hot patcher. We take a dump truck over to pick up asphalt to dump into that trailer. We can only get about 1 trip of, or basically 2 to 3 tons if we're lucky, of hot patch on the road a day. What I'm asking for are basically 2 hot patchers that are recyclers. What that means is we can basically make our own hot patch with millings that we have from the road projects that we have here. There are 2 burners in there that heat that up and melt it all back down. So overnight, you're creating a 4-ton load of hot patch that can be immediately placed on it. These can be pulled by the 1-ton military pickup trucks that we have, so we're no longer sending a dump truck over to the asphalt companies. We send the trailer over to be filled after we've worked out the overnight millings that we've made up of hot patch. So we could probably get, we know we could get at least 8 tons on the road out of each one of these trailers, and possibly 12 ton per day out of each one of these.
Does it have a roller that smooths out?
This one does not. We do have a roller. I've mentioned that it is fairly small. One of the things that I'm asking for, though, is also a planer so that we can cut these areas out that are really bad. What we need to be able to do is cut them out, take the hot patcher with the dump box, fill it up. The guys are very adept at using the front end loader that we have, and I believe in the video it actually shows this too, where they put it in, they fill it, and then they pack and scrape with that front end loader. So you can come back and roll it if needed at that point, but typically the front end loader, cutting that down and pushing it down would be sufficient.
Go ahead, Joe.
So I have a question.
Okay.
So you're asking to buy 2 hot patchers and recyclers.
Asphalt has perfected a process for its hot bucket.
Do you have enough equipment, the other equipment that's required to run both of them simultaneously? And if
Yes, we do, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we do. We have the military front end, well, we have a front end loader, and then we have the military backhoe that if we need that out as well. I would assume that the roller that we have would go with one of these trailers if need be. Some of it can still be throw and go, where we're just filling up small holes and patting it down and moving on, or driving it over with the truck. But you know, one hot patcher can be doing, we have several road cutouts from work that's been done. One hot patcher can be working on those and using that equipment that's necessary, and another hot patcher can be out doing the pothole throw and go.
Well, additionally, you'd have 8 tons of asphalt
Right.
that you could put down should you need to do that in a larger area. From what I was reading, a 2-ton hot patcher can do about 80 potholes, a 4-ton can do about 160 without having to go refill. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
Sorry.
Box recyclers, so you can repair potholes with hot mix asphalt all year long, whether the asphalt plant is open or not. We can significantly reduce your cold mix dependency and save you time, labor, and budget money. Look how Falcon users make long-lasting road repairs when no one else can.
That's just leftover asphalt that they're recycling.
We could essentially, with these, get rid of our cold patch altogether. We would store up our hot patch and be able to make this year-round. Right now, it's during the cold weather, we don't do any hot patching at all. The cold patch, we don't have enough on hand to really make it.
Start maximizing your road maintenance budget by making repairs that last 4 to 5 times longer than cold mix methods, no matter the time of year. Or to find an authorized dealer near you. Call Falcon.
So as they scrape that off, you'll see them just dump it back into the hot patcher to be recycled. That's something that we don't have the ability to do. Actually, I would say we throw 300 to 400 pounds of chunks away a day out of that 2 ton that we have, because they're just chunked and there's nothing that we can do with it. So these would just be immensely helpful.
What would that do for the funding, the budget? Would it impact it? We have the money.
We have the money, and I think Tom could speak to that better than I. We have approximately, we figured around $750,000 available that's in general fund money that has been put back over the last couple of years, so that we've been putting back, say, 30% rather than 15%. So a lot of the money is just there that hasn't been spent. There hasn't been someone that's brought forward the proposal to buy the equipment that we need. And what I'm asking for is that we just take those previous years and say, okay, let's just jump and make this happen this year.
Councilmember Reed?
I think that's absolutely fantastic. I know I talked to the guys who work on the streets a lot, and they said if we had the right machinery, we could do a much better job. You know, and we can drive on them, we complain, and we point fingers at them, but now they're going to be able to do what they want to do too, and that's the best job.
Right.
This is fantastic.
And they do. Tom, can you speak a bit to where the money would come from, please?
I can, actually.
Thank you, sir.
So while Tom's doing that, maybe I can go through the planer just to kind of go through that quickly. What the planer does in areas where we have a large amount of potholes, that it's just going to look terrible to just throw and go or put patch on and cover it up. What we can use is a planer that's attached to our military Bobcat, and we can plane that down 2 or 3 inches and then do an overlay, scraping it down and flattening that out, so that we end up with a lot more flat areas rather than those, I don't even know what I don't have a word for some of the areas that we have that are pothole after pothole, patch after patch, year after year. It looks terrible, and this would take care of a lot of that, having that planer as well. So this is just showing that basically how it mills the road. It's a small milling machine that attaches to the Bobcat. We're looking at a 14-inch miller that is about what it's doing right now. You have to make several passes, but I guess one of the examples would be on Erie Street and that seam. We would go down with this 14-inch mill all the way up and down Erie Street and repatch all those seams that are falling apart on us.
What part of Erie?
I would say the entire stretch of Erie.
Whatever we can get done.
Yeah.
I don't drive as far.
Yeah, they all have 2 seams and they're all falling apart. And what happens when the road opens up? It's not just the asphalt. It's the subbase underneath there that the water gets in, washes that sand away, and then when a car drives over that crack, it pushes that asphalt down, and we get the big potholes and the big terrible areas. So, Tom?
What I've passed out to you, I hope this isn't overkill, but I guess I want to take this opportunity, being the finance director, I want to make sure you guys are comfortable and understand what we have for the fund balance. So when we come up here in the fall and we talk about a budget, you know, I'm bringing you a general fund budget that's, I don't know, 60 pages long, and in the midst of that, you've already sat through other sessions for other budgets. I mean, it's just kind of an overwhelming, a lot of numbers. Tonight, we're going to focus just on fund balance, general fund. So really, to look at that, when you get that 60-page budget from the general fund, we really only need to focus on the last couple lines. So that's what I've got here. And I did it for looking at the years 2017, 2018, where we anticipated that we might end the year in a worst-case scenario, because if you recall, the audit's still not quite wrapped up yet. And then 2018, where we probably will more likely end the year, and it is much better than what we had earlier or previously anticipated. And then we're going to look at 19, where we, from our approved budget. So having said that, we really need to look at just the very bottom, the last couple lines on the budget from the general fund. So we're looking at total revenues, total expenditures, and then whether there's a profit or a loss, and then how that affects the fund balance. And to start with, you know, if we take a look at the 17 column, just to kind of walk through to see how this works. We had total revenues in 17 at $3,988,773.
Where are you at? Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. The 2017.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, definitely stop me if I get ahead of you. And right below that, line 2, our total expenditures for 17 was $4,049,895. So we ended up in 17 with a slight loss, $61,000. Now, what is the fund balance? The fund balance is your accumulation of all your profits and losses from all the years going back in time. So when we started 17, as line 4 shows, we had a fund balance of $1,497,901. $1,497,901. Because we had a $61,000 loss, it actually reduced the fund balance a little bit to $1,436,000. However, that still put us at a fund balance position of 35% of our total budget. So what does that mean? And we hear this talk all the time about trying to have a 15% fund balance, or the state says you should try to maintain a 15% fund balance. So we're at 35%. What does that mean? So if you move down below that gray bar in 17, so we ended up $1,436,000. 15% of our budget for the year was only $607,000. So we really only needed to have $607,000. We had an excess fund balance at the end of 17 of $829,295, and that's shown on line 9. Is everybody following that so far? If I move down to line 10, I'm moving that number down. Say, well, how will this impact it? If we take roughly $170,000 out for equipment or for whatever, what's that impact? How much does that affect us? If we take $170,000 out, that still would leave an excess of $659,000, or an excess of 31%. So we're still over twice what the state says we should maintain. The same holds true each year as you go forward. And if you look at the 2018 activity, the second to the last column to the right there, we anticipate, again, there will be some adjustments from the auditors, but we anticipate ending the year somewhere around $65,000 to the good, despite earlier projections of having $170,000 loss. So that would put us, if we ended the year there, depending again on the auditor's adjustments, that would leave us at 38%, or an excess of almost $1 million, $911,000 excess. If we take $170,000 away from that, as you see on line 11, we're still going to end up with an excess of $741,000, which is shown on line 12, or 33, almost 34% of our expenditures. Does that make some sense of how that fund balance is working?
Well, and one thing you have to remember last year as well, We came to you in September and requested $60,000 for a new boiler for City Hall to come out of fund balance. And we still ended up coming in under budget last year and didn't have to take that money out of fund balance. We actually put money back into the fund balance. So there's nothing to say that some of this money wouldn't even be spent out of fund balance depending on where we come up with the budget this year as well.
Questions?
No, I'm comfortable with it. We're almost double what the state requirements for fund balance.
I am. That's when we were meeting before and we were talking about it, and I was talking about the recycling of the asphalt. That was, I didn't know exactly what you called it, but I had heard that's what you do, and this is exactly what I was trying to get to. So.
Be using those millions rather
Yep,
than throwing
them away. Yes.
We're trying to, well, having the contractor take them away.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mead.
I still have more equipment, though.
Do we have to watch every video?
And it all falls in the 177, right?
It all falls there, but you really got to see this Durapatcher. I know, we all want to go home, but you really got to see this
We really don't.
Durapatcher.
He doesn't
Where it
understand
really-
unless you get yes or stop.
I know.
Where it really sells
excited
for
about
us
videos for 'em.
is when you have an overlay that, an overlay of hot patch isn't going to hold. Okay, so we have maybe 2 layers, and the top layer is gone in a fairly large area for a pothole. The Durapatcher takes care of that. What it does, if you want to play while I talk, that'd be great, Jill. It'll work out. Thank you.
We'll just watch the very first part that shows how it works.
It basically is an emulsion mix that's sprayed in and then becomes a permanent patch.
Choose the permanent solution. Choose the method proven by the Federal Highway Administration and the Strategic Highway Research Program to be the most cost-effective, fastest.
See, now, in a patch like that, a hot patch is not going to hold as well. The Durapatch will.
The road repair system from Dura.
And we have a lot of that. We have a lot of those types of patches as well that need to be done. Now, this is a truck. We are asking for the trailer. And that was the first picture that you saw, and it's also in the packet. So,
Less expensive.
we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
How long would it take to get same?
To get what?
Same,
To get them here?
yes.
The person for the Falcons is waiting for my call tomorrow. These are ship ready because these are state bid trailers. They make a bunch of them up. I'm sorry. They make a bunch of them up and they have them ready to go because that is kind of a state bid norm. And this is what we're looking.
Okay, we're good.
I think there was, well, did I get the planer, the wide area mower, so I can get more guys patching, and 2 hot patchers, and we would be like,
And so there's a couple of ways we can do this as well. I don't know if Tom wants to add on to any of this, but we can either take the full of the new budget that I gave you, the full $177,798 out of the fund balance and buy it currently right now, or we could finance this over 3, 4, 5 years and only have to pay that portion of it this year.
so it'd be like a lease to own
Yeah.
type of situation.
Now, granted, there would be also interest added to that, so there would be actually additional cost to the city, not tremendous cost, but there would be additional cost if we did it that way. But then you'd only be losing a third of that out of the fund balance instead of the whole thing this year. But obviously, we have a lot of money in the fund balance, and my personal opinion would be just to purchase.
Percentage-wise, I agree with Scott. My personal recommendation is that we just go ahead and get it done. Why pay the interest on it when we are potentially 37% over, and this only puts us maybe 33%. I think it's just a wise move to do.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we'll move. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the purchase of the Department of Public Works equipment as laid out, as explained. The total amount is just under $178,000. So please read the roll call.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Reed, Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Well, on behalf of the DPW, these guys, thank you, and these guys are just gonna be doing backflips tonight probably, when I tell them what's going on, because they truly all have good hearts and want to do the right thing for this city, and it's so frustrating not to be able to, so thank you.
And I want to compliment you, Mr. Phillips, for putting this together, working with our interim manager and Stephen Ford. We're going to do something. I think that's great.
Yes, thank you.
Good.
Okay. Next item, request approval of Resolution 2019-25 to set the 2019 tax levy. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support?
Support.
Okay. Who gets to explain this one? Because I really don't understand it. Okay. Mr. Mead.
Back again. So again, this is going along with the tax billing. This is something we have to do each year. You do kind of a form of this when we approve the budget. However, a couple things. Number one, when you do the budget, you're working more on estimates because you don't know exactly where you're going to be come June when you're getting ready to mail the summer tax bills out. But also because we've always done it this way in the past, we want to stay consistent and bring this to you tonight before, again, it'd be in the month of June as we get ready to do the summer tax billing. So all we're really doing is approving the fact that we have a taxable value citywide of the $90,275,846. That's what our bills will be generated off of, that taxable millage. And we're setting the established millage rates. And the odd thing about the millage rates is they actually are a little lower this year because surprisingly, I know at least since 2008, and I think going back even a little before that, the city of Albion's taxable value citywide has been declining every year from 2008, and I think it bottomed out in 17, and we had a real minute increase in 18. We're actually seeing a little bit more of an increase now in 19. This 90 million is up, I think, roughly about 5 million from 18's levy. What that triggers then is what other cities typically deal with, and we have not had to deal with, is then your Headley rollback and some of the Proposal A going back in the 90s kick in, and because of the increase in total taxable value, we have a limit then on how there's a formula you got to go through, and it actually works to where our millage that we levy has to actually come down slightly. So that 11.8897 mills for general fund, which we anticipate generating about $1,081,000. In prior years, that's been like 11.9937, I believe it was. And the 3 mills that we had levied for historically for streets and solid waste had to be capped at 2.979. And again, oddly enough, the recreation mill, everybody voted on 2 mills, but because of the increase in taxable value, we were capped to only be able to levy 1.9860 mills for recreation. So our revenue that comes in is going to be roughly the same, actually a little bit higher because of the increased taxable value, but the mills will be slightly lower. A little confusing, but does anybody have questions on that?
So these are legislated, state law required reductions in the millage. So
Correct.
even if everybody in the city of Albion says, nah, just go ahead and raise up and put a little bit more in the streets, we can't do that.
We could if we went to a formal vote.
Okay.
If you took it back, I guess the answer, the best way, let me reword that. This is as high as we can levy without the vote of the people.
Okay.
That's the way it's worded.
Okay. Any other questions by council? Anything else you want to share with us?
I hope not. I hope I'm done for tonight.
Okay. Well, that was an excellent explanation. I actually understand it now. I didn't before. Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none. Okay, if you would please call the roll. This is to approve Resolution 2019-25 to set the 2019 tax levy.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Next item, discussion, alcohol use permits, public streets and parks. And I'll offer Councilmember Williamson the opportunity to launch into that one.
I brought this up as a discussion item tonight. I've been approached by a few business owners, nonprofit organizations in the community who are looking for a way, because currently the city's policy around alcohol use on public property or streets is that it's no, you can't. If you look at our ordinance, there's not an easy way for any organization or business who might want to hold an outdoor event or function, either right outside their business on public property or at any of the major town gatherings, to be able to have a tent or a permitted area for beer, a brewery, or an establishment that serves alcohol. I wanted to bring this up to council tonight because we do have a new brewery in town, and we do have a lot of events that happen in our community, and there's been talk of asking the city to change this ordinance, not to make it a free-for-all, everybody can just do what they want, but to provide a permitting process through the city, much like any of our other permitting processes for like special equipment or use policies and things like that. I wanted to bring up to council to see if we could have the city attorney look into what other communities do to protect liabilities and permit processes in order to possibly look at a change in this ordinance and kind of gauge my fellow council members' interest in doing this. An example that I would like to throw out there that's been really helpful in the Jackson community is Art, Beer, and Wine Festival that happens at the Ellis Sharp Museum. That's been going around now for 5 years, I believe. And it brings in thousands of people from around the community that will come and spend their money at the Ellis Sharp and in the Jackson community for basically a 4-hour event in the afternoon where they get to sample beers and wines and buy art and walk around the grounds of the Ella. We have a few businesses that probably would be interested in being able to have some type of permit like that to do something similar, or even maybe something a little bit different, a little bit more innovative right here locally to attract people to come visit our community. And with that, I'll open up the floor for other comments or suggestions.
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. I think, I heard you say that it would be, your suggestion would be that it's a permit process where a business would have to apply through the city and pay the fees, and then it would come to council for approval. Yeah, okay, thank you.
I think the thing I also want to add is I think there's a couple facets. I think we need to talk to public safety too about what the best way to deal with that is, as we develop a new ordinance, to see their concerns there. But then the other piece is there an insurance piece? Like, do they have to purchase an insurance rider, or are they covered by their business? And Cullen has
City
something to
attorney.
say.
So, for example, my recollection, and Scott, feel free to chime in, my recollection is, if a business is going to, for example, have an event outside, maybe not necessarily on their property, but say on public property, not only would they go through a permit process with us, but they go through a permit process with the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. And I think they have to provide proof of liability insurance as part of that application.
Mm-hmm. And it goes along with their liquor license that they currently have. And to give you an example of this, so if Cascarelli's decided to have a beer tent, they could put a beer tent outside their property in the back of the building because they own it and have that tent. And there's not a lot the city can do to stop that from occurring. But I had a request for their 1-year anniversary from the brewery to do a beer tent on Ash Street. And we'd already had approval for them to close Ash Street down and do that. The problem was that's public property, and the way our ordinance is written currently, we can't do that. And so they're kind of landlocked where they're at. They don't own any property outside their business, and so they would have to get permission from the city to either use the parking lot out back or the street or so forth. So they could draw a lot larger crowd for a special event like that, or even on the festival, that they can't draw right now because of the lack of space that they have.
Councilmember Williamson.
Yeah, I also wanted to make sure that it was clear that it wasn't for an individual, it was for a business or an entity. This isn't like you can just get a permit to do champagne in the park or anything like that. I don't want there to be any sort of thing like that, but keeping it business and organization focused keeps the level of the event at a higher level.
And that, oops, excuse me.
Councilmember Spicer.
And that business would already have to have a valid liquor license, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Well, I guess that's not necessary. Yes, they would have to they could get a temporary liquor license.
Oh, okay.
So they wouldn't have to have a valid liquor license currently, but they could get a temporary one for the event.
Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, because I remember for the old school reunion, that was something, because you know how we overcrowd Charlie's every year, and that was one of the stipulations that stopped us from being able to, because we wanted to purchase a tent and put it on the outside. And that was one of the things that stopped us from not being able to do that because of this ordinance. And that's a major money maker for us.
When they have music.
Victory Park is the only thing in the ordinance, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Colin, that allows for that type of.
Victory Park and Isman House are the only two separate ordinance exemptions that are currently on the books.
Right.
Okay, are there any other comments?
When I went to Rapid City, South Dakota a couple weeks ago, and we ran into a Thursday night downtown. They do it every Thursday all summer long, some type of rockin' Rapid City something, and it's a local event, and they basically block off about 4 streets. And one of these portions of the street, there was actually 4 points of entry, which I thought was a little too much, but they actually had it gated off, and before you could walk in, if you were 21, you could get a wristband, and you had to stay in that gated area to do this. So there are all sorts of options that I think Cullen could present us with for making sure that we're containing anything going forward.
So I'm just fixing to ask, kids are not going to be involved in that.
No.
City Attorney.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Councilman Williamson is describing is very, very common. By way of example, one of my other municipalities I represent, Meridian Township, every year does celebrate Meridian, and for that limited purpose, they actually fence off an area right behind the township building, strictly where alcohol is served. People are carded on their way in. They can only consume alcohol in that limited area. A lot of municipalities do it that way. So what I'd be happy to do is look at some other cities and townships, see what they've got going on, and bring you maybe some ordinances for you to peruse, and maybe we can formulate something, or at least consider some options for the city.
All right. Future agenda items.
I'll add just future agenda items, whatever update comes from this ordinance change possible.
Yeah, but are you going to be prepared to do that?
Yeah, I'll find you certainly some
Okay.
some items for discussion, so
Okay.
yeah, maybe we just put it on for a discussion item.
Okay. Other future agenda items for council?
Rental certification.
And that's going to be an update from the rental cert committee. Okay, we'll put that back on.
Could we get a recreation update from Larry and team, possibly?
Okay. Any other agenda items? Okay. Public comments. Persons addressing city council, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Proper decorum is required, and let's please respect the speakers.
Good evening. My name is Betty Branch, and I am working with Al Smith, and also with the help of Emily Smith, Rising Tide. We are making a plea out to the people in our neighborhoods through you council people, which are so graciously, I know, are going to accept that and delegate. But what we've got here is packets for you. And in each packet, I think he's number 4, you want to give that to him?
Page number 6.
sis. Okay, you're fine. There's. Yeah, you would. Okay, the other one there.
I'm taking care of 3.
Okay. Marcola. Okay, I'll give you Marcola. Will anybody see hers? Marcola. Okay. Well, there's 3 packages, sets of maps of every street, very simple instructions. And we're asking people, we have walkers, we have people that love to walk. They have their same routes every day, and they are constantly out there. We're asking them, wouldn't they join in with us? Be happy to tell us about the sidewalks you're walking on. And just browsing, looking up at the street signs. And then make notes. There's a simple 1, 2, 3 step on making notes on each one of these. And after you're done, then you'll turn it back to us, we turn it back to the group, and they coordinate everything. This way, we can help Ken and everybody else and take some of the load off of the city and let us do some of the work for you. And this is what we're asking, for volunteers. So if anybody you know want to help volunteer, it's Al, it's me, and your council people. And we would appreciate that very much. Let them know what we can do. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
This is actually a continuation of the S² program for sidewalks and street signs. So Emily has been working more with Betty than anyone on breaking the city down into your precincts, and then breaking your precincts down into at least 2, 3, or even 4 sections, and mapping out those sections to make it easier for 2, 3, or 4 teams to do each precinct, and we could have the city done in a week. It would be amazingly simple if we could just get some bodies to do it.
Right.
Thank you.
That's all we're asking.
Thank you.
Are there further public comments this evening?
Hi, Al Smith, 1209 Adams Street. Real simply, for Councilperson Williamson, I accept your challenge, sir. I will take on the bicycle program.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Additional comment?
Juanita Solis Kidder, 1211 Edward Street. I've been wanting to do this for some time, and I keep waiting for other members of CBA to come to the meetings, and they don't. But I wanted to thank the Albion community for allowing us to raise the money to do all the things that we do as far as beautifying Albion, from the city employees to the chief to, you know, individuals, everybody helping. And like Lynn, you know, trying to get something beautiful for Albion. And we have been able to have enough money to put, there's 6, one bench is still waiting for its place, but there's like 7 benches downtown, and that we were able to purchase. They match the trash receptacles that belong to the city. They match the 23 planters that belong to CBA, Citizens to Beautify Albion. But it's all giving back to the community. It's all for Albion to enhance, to make it beautiful. And, you know, that's our passion. We love to go out there and weed and all this stuff, but we are overwhelmed because we are getting older, our group is getting smaller. I'm asking everybody in the community, come and help. Even if you have 15 minutes, half an hour, pick a little section, pick the weeds. We haven't had to go out with our watering truck because, you know, we've had enough rain. But with the rain, the weeds are the ones that grow much faster than the pretty flowers. So we need help. Don't have to ask any permission, just go do it. You know, gather the weeds and make it pretty. If everybody helped and did just a little bit around your area, around the streets, I mean, it would just be amazing. So I implore everybody to get out, get fresh air, get exercise. That's my thing all the time. Pick up litter, whatever you want to do. Adopt a planter downtown, all of that stuff. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Additional public comments this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to the city manager's report.
I received information from the Cameron County Land Bank today that they will be putting out bids for the demolition of Union Steel Building. Now, before everybody gets excited, they are simply trying to get a price quote on it so that they know what funds that they have to raise to get that done. So they don't have the funds to do it, but they're actually looking just to get the prices on it. But that'll be public, and so they wanted me to let the community know that it wasn't necessarily coming down yet, that they're working on it though.
We should still get excited.
Yeah. It's a step forward.
Progress.
Exactly. And then I would also like to remind everybody about the Health and Safety Fair over at the fire station this Saturday from noon to 3. Everybody's welcome to come and see what we have. That's all.
All right. Thank you. Council member comments.
I'd just like to thank everyone who came out to the Juneteenth celebration on Saturday up at the Washington Garden Middle School. We had a nice time. It was not a whole lot of people, but there was people, and we had 2 music groups, Airtight and Chris Cannon Band. That was absolutely fantastic. 5 o'clock we had the Gospel Fest, which was very, very nice. And I want to thank Mrs. Betty Branch and Juanita Coney, because we haven't before been able to get the big banners. But these 2 ladies saw me and they said, we're going to get those banners for you. And I said, okay. And they did. So we had 2 very nice big banners out for Juneteenth. And just want you to know that next year, hopefully it will not rain, and we will have it at Holland Park. And it's going to be really, really nice, because I've had people say, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? And so next year will probably be bigger and better than it's been in the last 3. We also honored Mrs. Anderson, who was the one that started Juneteenth here in Albion in 2009. She developed dementia, and so passed it on to me. So just be ready for next year so we can get together and have a good time.
I want to personally thank you for everything you've done making this happen last year and this year and the number of years you've been doing it. And I was there, and it was a reasonable turnout. I would like to see what we can do. So if other council members have ideas or residents have ideas, what we can do to really get the presence and the participation from all across Albion. And we're going to do this next year. It's a state holiday. It's always the 3rd Saturday in June. So we have plenty of time to start planning. And I think it's incumbent we get representation from all of the civic organizations, churches, so on and so forth. So I would like to really come up with some ideas on how to really boost the attendance.
Big shout out to Cliff Harris.
Yes.
Because when it started, I had been checking with the weather every day to find out how the weather was going to be, because I heard it was going to rain. Went from 40 to 50 to 60% rain. And so he called and he said, how would you like to do it at the Washington Garden Junior High? And I said, can you do that? He said, done. So very, very nice. And I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark.
I'd like to thank Al, and the reason why I want to say, bring special attention to him tonight is because sometimes when people talk to us as council members, they think that the conversation is just kind of floating through our brains and we just sit there and nod and we're not listening. But he shared some information to me about his concern about veterans housing and gave me some ideas and what had been going through. And I followed up on the people that he had talked to, because he didn't know that I knew them personally. And we're going to call it Project Veterans, and we'll see what's going to come of that. But we do have some investors that are interested in building some subsidized houses for veterans. But the other side of it is, and the other gentleman is not here tonight, but they're also looking at building upscale housing here in Albion. So keep our fingers crossed, and you guys pray for that, and hopefully we'll see that happen real soon. Thank you.
Comments by other council members this evening? Okay. Thank you all for showing up this evening and participating in this. Your presence and your input is very important. And I encourage everybody, if you get a chance, to come down here and hold us accountable, stand up and make public comments, and contact your council representatives on whatever issues is important to you, and I'm always available. You can contact me as well. May I have a motion to adjourn?
No, we had absent council
Oh,
members.
I did it again. My apologies. Okay, so we have 2 absent council members this evening. May I have a motion to approve absent council members? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you, and thank you. Okay, please call the roll. Because it's on here.
For the council members?
Yeah, yes, it's on the agenda. Okay, all right. No, it's another item on the agenda, so, motion to adjourn.
Support.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Look, we can have some entertainment and fun.
Hey, Scott.
Okay, what else do I need to sign?
Sign that one for the